She stayed. She stayed through the arguments that felt like tidal waves, pulling her under until she couldn't breathe, only to recede and leave her gasping on the shore, wondering how she got there. She stayed through the silent treatments that stretched for days, turning their shared space into a cold, cavernous void where her voice would echo back, unheard. She stayed through the broken promises that piled up like unread letters, each one a testament to a future that would never arrive. She stayed because she remembered the beginning, a time when his laughter was the only music she wanted to hear, when his hand in hers felt like the safest place on earth. She held on to that memory like a single, flickering candle in a hurricane, believing, desperately, that its light could somehow guide them back to what they had lost. She told herself that all relationships have their storms, that love wasn't a constant state of sunshine, but a commitment to hold the umbrella over each other when the rain began to fall. But she was the only one holding the umbrella, and she was getting soaked to the bone. She stayed, convincing herself that his distance was just a phase, a product of stress from work, or the weight of unspoken burdens he carried alone. She became an archaeologist of his moods, carefully digging through layers of indifference to find the fossil of the man she fell in love with. Some days she'd find a fragment, a quick smile, a brief touch, a shared joke that felt like a relic from a happier time. These small discoveries were enough to fuel her hope for weeks. She would replay them in her mind, polishing them until they shone, using them as proof that the love was still there, just buried. She would make his favorite dinner, hoping the familiar aroma would trigger a memory in him too. She would suggest they watch the movie they saw on their third date, praying the dialogue would spark a flicker of recognition in his eyes. She was a curator of their shared history, constantly trying to put the pieces back together for an audience of one who had long since left the museum. The silence in the house grew louder than any argument ever could. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket, and she was beginning to forget what it felt like to breathe freely. She stayed until the sound of his key in the door no longer brought a flutter of anticipation, but a knot of anxiety in her stomach. Would he speak to her tonight? Would he look at her, really look at her, and see the woman who was slowly disappearing before his very eyes? Or would he walk past, his gaze fixed on his phone, offering a noncommittal grunt that was meant to pass as a greeting? She found herself performing a careful ballet of existence in their home, tiptoeing around his moods, making herself smaller and smaller to avoid disturbing the fragile peace. She would wait for him to initiate conversation, to ask about her day, to bridge the ever-widening gap between their two islands. But the invitation never came. He was content in his solitude, a solitude that happened to share a roof with her. She would sit across from him at the dinner table, the clinking of their forks the only sound, and she would study, his face searching for a sign, any sign that he was still in there, that the person she loved hadn't been replaced by this quiet, distant stranger. She stayed, even as her friends' concerned glances turned into gentle, probing questions. "How are things?" they'd ask, their voices laced with a caution she couldn't ignore. She would offer a bright, practiced smile and deliver a monologue of curated happiness. "We're good," she'd say. "Just busy." She became a masterful storyteller, weaving tales of romantic dinners that were actually silent meals eaten in front of the television, of deep conversations that were really just her talking to herself in the car. She painted a portrait of a partnership for them, a vibrant canvas of shared dreams and mutual support, while her reality was a faded, monochrome sketch. Admitting the truth felt like a failure, a public declaration that she had chosen wrong, that she wasn't strong enough or lovable enough to make it work. So she protected his image, and in doing so, she built a fortress around her own pain, isolating herself even further. Her friends would nod, wanting to believe her, but the sadness in her eyes told a story her words tried so desperately to conceal. She stayed until she realized she was decorating a house that was no longer a home. She bought new throw pillows to brighten the couch where they never sat together, a new duvet for the bed where they slept like strangers, backs turned to one another in the dark. She lit scented candles, hoping to fill the air with something other than unspoken resentment. She became a gardener of a barren land, tending to a love that had no roots left to draw water. She hosted dinner parties, orchestrating evenings of laughter and conversation, creating an illusion of warmth and connection. She would play the perfect hostess, her smile never faltering, while he would play his part, the quiet husband, present in body but absent in spirit. Their friends would leave, complimenting their beautiful home and their wonderful life, and as the door closed, the silence would rush back in, a vacuum that sucked all the air, all the life out of the room. She would stand in the middle of her beautifully decorated cage and feel the profound, crushing weight of it all. She stayed until she started talking to herself, not out of eccentricity, but out of a desperate need for conversation. She would have entire dialogues in her head while washing the dishes, imagining his responses, his questions, his laughter. She would narrate her day to the empty passenger seat in her car, sharing the funny thing that happened at work, the frustrating encounter at the grocery store. These imaginary conversations were more fulfilling, more intimate than any real exchange they had had in months. She was creating a phantom partner, a ghost built from the memories of the man he used to be. This ghost was attentive, he was kind, he was present. He would listen to her, comfort her, make her feel seen. And then she would come home to the real man, the one who was physically there, but emotionally a million miles away, and the contrast was a physical ache in her chest. She was living a double life, one in her head where she was loved, and one in reality where she was simply tolerated. She stayed until love felt like loneliness. It was a slow, creeping realization, not a sudden epiphany. It was the moment she got good news, and her first instinct was to call her sister, not him. It was the evening she cried silently in the bathroom over a sad movie, knowing he was in the next room, oblivious, and that even if he knew, he wouldn't know what to do. It was the Sunday morning she woke up and looked at the man sleeping beside her and felt a profound sense of otherness, as if she were looking at a complete stranger. The feeling was no longer a storm, no longer a void. It was just an empty room. Love was supposed to be a shared warmth, a safe harbor, a feeling of being known. For her, it had become the chilling recognition that you can be lying next to someone and still be completely, utterly, and devastatingly alone. The space between their bodies on the mattress felt like a canyon, and so she left. She didn't leave in a storm of anger or a flood of tears. She left quietly on a Tuesday morning after he had gone to work. She packed a single suitcase with the things that felt like hers alone, her books, a favorite sweater, the photograph of her grandmother. She looked around the beautiful, silent house, at the throw pillows and the scented candles, and she felt nothing. It was just a place, a collection of objects. The home she had been trying to build was never about the walls or the furniture. They were supposed to be built in him. As she closed the door behind her for the last time, the click of the lock was not a sound of finality, but a sound of release. Walking away felt, for the first time in a very long time, like walking toward herself. The loneliness of being on her own was a clean, open space full of possibility. It was a hopeful loneliness, a stark contrast to the suffocating, hopeless loneliness she had been living with for so long. She stayed until love felt like loneliness, and then she chose the loneliness that felt like freedom.